kick this thing off. I'm sure we'll get some folks to come in as we're going. We already got a good group here, so we don't want to punish those of us that have gotten here. So it's good to see everybody, and I'm actually very happy to be here today with you guys. My name is Ismael Ray Reyes, and I'm happy to have this live audience so we can answer any questions you may have about this lovely asset here in beautiful Buckhead district of Atlanta, Georgia, the park at Peachtree Hills. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, location, we all know that. And this place has it in spades. You just can't, you can do a lot of things with a property. You can't put it somewhere nice. You can either try to make that place nice or make the location nice, but it's always so much easier when it's nice to begin with. And that's a fantastic area. And we'll go over some of that. Now, that just so everyone knows, this is not meant to go over the entire webinar, which we've already done for this asset. This is more to answer any questions that have come up since then. And we've actually had several investors already invest. That always happens, especially those that didn't get in on the last deal. They normally jump in right away, and they understand these things can go quickly. So we've had some questions from them and some investments from them. And then we also have questions that some people that are not able to make it tonight have asked. And what we normally do for these is we'll have essentially the beginning portion is just kind of getting everyone up to speed on some of the key things with the property, just in case some of you did not see the webinar. And if you didn't see the investment presentation, we'll get that to you when whoever you're communicating with that got you on here should get that to you if they haven't already. So you'll be able to see that. And then, of course, those questions from people that wanted to be here but couldn't be here tonight. And so we'll get those answered first. That may actually, essentially answer some of the questions you all may have, but it also may actually trigger some additional questions. So, this is about transparency. This is what we like to do with these. This is a partnership between us, the active group, and investors that are wanting to get in on this, and they want to be able to get a feel for the team, get a feel for the asset, and really dig into these numbers and to dig into the presentation if there's anything that they still have some questions about. And so that's what we're here for. So I will go to the next slides. And what we'll do right away is just kind of go over some of the key pieces, just a few, not to go over these in detail, but just so you know who we are, in case you don't know a lot about us. So some partners of mine and I, after doing several deals together, decided to be a little bit more formal about how we go into these deals and how we partner. And we created the Admirable Group for that. So what you'll see, myself as managing partner, Winston Schofield on this slide as director of operations. And on this slide, we have Alfredo, who is our director of finance, Alfredo Hooker. We have Tim Little, who's our director of research and analytics. We have Kelly Ianon. Last time she beat me up because I mispronounced her name. Sorry, Kelly. Who is our director of marketing and investor relations, and Carla Kennard, who's our director of acquisitions. Carla did a phenomenal job with looking at some of this underwriting. Up front, this underwriting was done. The initial underwriting was done by one of our partners who was the lead sponsor on this. JP, I think he's going to be on the call. I'm not sure if he is, but hopefully
I'm here.
All right, JP. Sorry, I didn't see you. So good. So any questions that we have on underwriting, we'll take our first stab at it since we did go through that. But if it goes in a little bit deeper, I'm going to ask JP to kind of jump in and go through some of his analysis as well, just supporting analysis. And he's anything that if there's any questions that really deep dive into underwriting, instead of kind of sucking up the entire presentation to that, we're prepared to take those offline and actually provide a little video to go over some of the details on the underwriting if there are some questions with that. We think we've answered a lot of the questions, but sometimes people want to dig in a little bit deeper. So we're prepared for that, if not during tonight's presentation, our Q&A, but certainly afterwards, we'll definitely dive into those. So we want you to have all of your questions answered. So let's go over some of the other members of the sponsor group, along with the Admirable Group. We have, oops, let me go back here. We have JP and Matt, who are part of the Significant Lifestyle Communities. They are essentially the ones that found this fantastic deal. JP is in Atlanta. So he and Winston are kind of our people that are there that are going to be able to see this thing day in and day out to make sure that everything's going the way we want it to go. Our next sponsor team is the MTN Investment Group. And I've done deals with these guys, Russell and Charles. I know Nissan well. So they're kind of the ones that kind of brought us onto this thing along with JP. And since then, we've had a chance to really go to the property, visit, speak with JP, get comfortable with his way of doing business. He's done business before in Atlanta, like we've done business in the area. So really comfortable with the team. I think we have a very good, solid team that's going to be looking after this asset. And when you go after assets that are B class and A class assets, they require a little bit more nuance touches. I mean, this is not just slapping paint on something and doing the basics. You really need to kind of perk those properties up so that they kind of meet the expectation of these investors. A lot of them, which aren't, not investors, members, or as we like to call them, tenants, the expectations that they're going to be living in better areas, in better properties, and have a better feel for those communities. So we feel that JP and his team are going to do a wonderful job, and they already have. And if you look at the presentation, he goes into in depth about how he and his team and us are going to be able to really take this property and get it to Buckhead standards. And there's so much room for growth here. It's unbelievable. I can't believe we're still, there are still properties like this out here. So I'm glad to be a part of it. All right. So let's kick into the actual property just a little bit. I went over this during the investment presentation, but in case some of you did not see that, and just as a refresher, we'll kick this Q&A off with this. And so like I mentioned, location. That's essentially the most important part in any kind of real estate investment. And you can't beat this one. I mean, it is Buckhead district of Atlanta is phenomenal. It's been phenomenal for a long time. People just want to be there. These aren't essentially tenants or members who have no choice. They have a choice and they want to live here and they're willing to pay more to live here. That's exactly the kind of properties that I like to invest in, properties where people have that sense of community and wanting to be there versus, I have no choice, so I'm just going to be here. And so that's fantastic. The average household income in Buckhead is around 167,000. That's significant. I just again pointing to that group of folks that are going to be the members and or tenants here. And I use members because if you saw the presentation, that's kind of part of the way we this team will treat tenants differently. We want them to feel like they are members of a community, not tenants. And so I'll use those two words, but essentially the members is the word that we want to communicate, because that's what we want them to feel like, more than just a tenant. So yes, 167, as I said, as far as the income, abundant professional employment opportunities, it's unbelievable. We're going to take this property that already had a 1.5 million in repairs, a lot of them to the exterior, and we're going to do a value add plan to this. And we're going to focus the value add on interior renovations, getting that property, again, to Buckhead standards. There's only been 11 units that have been renovated. The rest of them are just ripe for really getting those up to that standard that we want, that will really drive the rental income, because they're going to just be worth more. People are going to be wanting to pay more to live there. So we expect that we're going to renovate all the units by the 33rd month or the third year. I mean, those things can fluctuate a little bit because essentially the property it's over 90% occupied. And so essentially as people move out, we're going to do heavy renovations to those interiors. And that's why we're giving ourselves that entire time to do so, because we're just going to do it as the units become available. And the plan is to return 100% of investor capital at that third year when we refinance this property. And I say that that's the plan, but there's always a possibility. And we plan on holding this for 5 years total. So 2 more after the refinance when we return your capital. But if the market conditions dictate, we're going to sell at that 3rd year. So we take a look at both options and we figure out what's the best option for you, which happens to coincide what's the best option for us as active investors. It really works. It's a win-win situation. When you do well, when you get a high return, we then get a high return as well for our efforts. So it really does align perfectly. So that's kind of the idea of the timeline on that. And as far as returns go, we're looking at giving investors, passive investors, a 7 pref, and we project returns to be approximately 18% and having over a 1.7 equity multiple. Those are significant returns, especially now when we are kind of going into this time where it's hard to find these kind of deals. The prices have gone up significantly. So when you find these, you just got to jump at them. And I couldn't hesitate. We just finished the deal and we were like, I can't believe we're getting into another one, but it just makes so much sense on this one for sure. So what I'll do next as part of the refresher, I'm going to turn it over to Carla. Carla's going to go over the investment highlights. And after that, she's going to start going through some of the questions that we've already received from potential investors and investors that have already put in money. After Carla does about half of the questions, then we'll turn it over to Kelly. She'll turn it over to Kelly to go over the final questions. We'll hit the timeline one last time as far as when we need to get your money into this deal so you can be part of it. And then we're going to turn it over to the live audience for your questions. And we're going to stay here until you guys have your questions answered. So Carla, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ray. So he's gone over most of the key highlights of the financials, but you guys have seen this page and you are well aware of the numbers, but I'd love to just kind of refresh things a little bit here. Purchase price at 26.5. The preferred return is a nice 7%. And as the profit sharing model shows, we are not going to be paid anything until that 7% is paid to our investors. And that's every year. And there'll be another page where we can recap those particulars as well. The IRR target is almost approaching 18%, which is really notable. The equity multiple, Ray conservatively said 1.7. We really do expect to push that number past and could potentially approach over a 2.2x return. Holding it for 3 to 5 years, obviously, and as he mentioned, if the market is favorable, we would love to sell in year 3. But obviously, it depends on how things are going to shake out in year 3. Equity raise of 7.1 million. The sponsor group has contributed 15% of that number. So the remaining figure is up to all of us to raise, and each of us will have fractional ownership of this amazing property. The year 1 depreciation, as you guys know, the bonus depreciation is estimated to be 75 to 80% of your investment amount. So without going into a lot of detail there, definitely, as you know, consult with your tax advisor on those particulars. But as you can see, it's an overall really strong proposition. And you may have seen a dozen deals this year. But in our opinion, and as the data dictates and tells us, this is really an extra unique opportunity. Not only strong fundamentals, but strong market fundamentals, as Ray mentioned on the other slide. So the entire package is really a solid proposition. So we talked about being conservative with our underwriting, and it really has been grounded in just gentle assumptions with post-renovation monthly rent being well below the competitive set. We have a page that goes over the comps of the neighborhood, and we looked at like properties, and all of the rents that we are targeting, well, currently are well below the market, and post-renovation, they will still be conservatively set at either midpoint or below the average rent in the area of like properties, mind you. Some of the properties that we are at or below have not even been renovated. So post-renovation will still be at a very conservative level. Our year over year projected rent growth is also just estimated to be a conservative 3 to 4% per year. Every other resource out there predicts that the Buckhead rent trends will continue at a strong growth, well over what we are projecting over the next 5 years. So again, that just leaves room for potential upside, and we'd rather go in conservatively, as any smart investor would want to. Year one, the current below market rent allows us to see a loss to lease currently at $500,000. We are going to be able to really attack that, commencing with the rent increases as we turn over all of the units. So that is going to be a year one burn off right there that helps us really drive our operating income for year one at the end of year one. Our forecasted refinance cap rate is at 4.5%, and we believe that is still conservative. It's 0.2% higher than the current market cap rate, and our forecasted exit cap rate is 1.2 points higher than the current. So we've built in that layering year over year, just so we could feel safe with a reasonable conservative cap rate. And I'd like to add, for properties of this stature and in this particular area, we typically see cap rates at a much lower rate. So this, even factoring in that element, shows, we feel really good about the exit cap rate being at 5.5%. So the financing terms, you guys may have read, obviously, but just want to recap that in case you have any questions. Bridge loan, 3-year with an option to extend +1+1, interest only. And the interest rate is at 3.95%, 30-year amortization. So I mentioned comps in the area. You guys saw this in the original presentation, but this lists all the properties in case you just have any questions about this. We have it in here if you want to drill down. But as you can see, below the blue line, or the blue line, are the average comps. And the second line below that is what the current rents are. And you can see how much below the average comps our current rents are. The studio rent is $1,200, 1 bedroom $1,262, 2 bedroom $1,446. And when we move to post renovation rents, the studio rent is at $1,319. That is still well below the comps at $1,433. And across the board, you can see the 1 bedroom, we're still below that. And the second bedroom, 2 bedrooms, were below the average there. That's a very comfortable place to be because people want to live in Buckhead. And it's well known that rents are just high in Buckhead. I mean, you have to earn a substantial, nice, solid income to live there. So to provide a Buckhead standard at really moderate rental rates is just a win for a lot of people. It just makes it more affordable for those who are aspiring to live in the Buckhead area. So this is the 5-year pro forma. You may have dug into this on your own, but I just highlighted just some key takeaways again, showing the gross operating income in year one being 2.17 million. And we have driven up the numbers, obviously forced depreciation with the rental increases and rehabs, burning off loss to lease, as you can see, as it rolls into year two, and truly increasing other income. And we noted that in what those elements are. It's a lot of great features that will really increase other income. And because the majority of units are being renovated, there's no real turnover cost year to year. And that's why I highlighted that gap in the P&L. But as you can see, we have driven our NOI from a 1.3 million to a little over 2 million by year 5. And that is just a really nice bump, and it's what's enabling us to generate the returns that we are projecting for this particular property. So we will also, as I mentioned, we have the year one depreciation, the bonus depreciation, because a cost segregation study has been conducted, and we estimate that you'll be able to depreciate 75 to 80% of your investment in year one. So you think about what your returns are going to be year one, just from the deal alone, year 2 and year 3, and you add on the depreciation that you'll be able to benefit from in year 1, that just sweetens the pot all around from a return standpoint. So I'd like to just bump this to Kelly so she could talk to the K1.
Awesome. Thank you, Carla. So as we talk about taxes, and we're talking about that cost segregation study and the distributions from particular property, you may be wondering how those are reported. So on an annual basis, you would receive a K1 document that would identify the income and the depreciation that is based on your share of ownership of the property. You would expect to receive this on or about March 31st in preparation for filing your personal taxes. So you may also be wondering, when do you start getting paid from your investment? So the first distributions we anticipate going out as early as 6 months after acquisition, but no later than 12 months after acquisition. This allows the team time to stabilize the asset, which we're already at, as Ray mentioned, 90+%, but allows us to start implementing our value add business plan and bumping those reps in order to support the preferred returns that we had talked earlier. So another great question that we get, and I know I also ask this question when I'm investing in other deals, is understanding what the active investors, the general partners, myself, and the team that's speaking this evening are putting into the particular deal. It's important to ensure that our interests are aligned and that we believe in the deal as well. And we illustrate that by investing in this particular deal, 15% of the capital raise, so that over $7 million raise, we are putting in 1.3 million alongside you, our limited partners.
How many general partners do you have, Kelly?
We have, doing math in my head, we're right around 10 general partners.
And really the way you look at that is based on the number of groups, right? Because we can have our group, essentially the 5 of us, 6 of us, is actually one general partner in this acquisition. So when you count people is one thing, but you got to look at it from an organizational standpoint. Every sponsor group that I mentioned is essentially one general partner in the acquisition. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Just another quick question on the interest rate that I saw a few slides before. I think it was 3.45 or 3.9. How are they getting that interest rate with the rates being as high as they are today? And they also mentioned that it will be capped. What's that going to be capped at?
Would it be okay if we table that while we go through the remainder of these questions, and then when we open it up, we will address that question?
Oh, sure, no problem.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that.
Love it. I love it.
I know. It's like I want to dive in, but I also don't want to jump around. So we'll finish going through these. We're almost completed with these questions that we've gotten in advance, and then we will absolutely go back and address that question. So timing, the deal timing, this is a hot deal. We're moving quickly on this one. We are scheduled to close late May. So we are looking, in order to fund the deal, we are looking for investor contributions to be in escrow by mid next week, May 24th, which happens to be my birthday, FYI. These deals and any of our deals, it's of course first come, first serve basis. We are currently committed to about 45% from our current investor base. So we are well on our way to achieving the investment raise. So keep that in mind when you are reviewing the deal yourself and making sure you're getting comfortable with it. That time is of the essence. Once we meet that raise amount, the deal's closed. Okay, so great. You've made the decision to invest. This deal works for you. You're ready to go. So your next step is really to sign into your investor portal. You are going to, as Ray mentioned earlier, in order to see the full webinar, you're going to go back to the documentation of whoever your general partner contact is that invited you here today. They would provide you access to the investor webinar. They would also provide you access to the link to your investor portal. So make sure you reach out to whoever your general partner contact is if you don't already have the link to their investor portal. And that is where you'll be able to sign on, create an account if you don't already have one, review all of the legal documentation, as well as do all the electronic signatures and receive the wire information to submit your investment. Which then leads into the next question, I believe, regards to bank wiring information. So again, that's on the investor portal once you sign your subscription documents. You can also request this information from your general partner contact. Just, of course, keep in mind that email is not a secure source. So we really push the investor portal where it is secure. And you'll want to make sure if you receive any wiring information via email that you're picking up the phone and calling to confirm that information is accurate. Earlier, we had talked a bit about the general partner, limited partner splits, specifically the preferred return. So this offering, we have a preferred return of 7%, which means that limited partners, passive investors such as yourselves, will receive that 7% preferred return prior to the active investor team receiving a share of the profit split. And then as we can see, as that return increases, so from 7 to 10%, then the general partnership team starts to receive a small slice of that split with the 90-10, and it continues to grow as the returns increase. And this is where our investors, we're aligned with our investors, we're aligned to make sure that we are incentivized to maximize the performance of a particular property so that you, the passive investors, make great money on it. And then of course, us, the active investors, also start to see a stronger return for the property. Accredited investor. So one question that I get asked a lot is, do you have to be an accredited investor to invest in this particular offering? Yes, you do. We are adhering to the SEC Rule 506C, which requires to be accredited investors only. Quick reference of what an accredited investor is, it would be that you have a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding your primary residence, or an annual individual income of $200,000 or more for the last 2 years, with the expectation it will continue, or as a couple of $300,000. That is how you would, that's how you would meet the requirements to be an accredited investor. For this particular offering, we also need to have verification of that status. And that can be achieved either through a letter from your CPA verifying that you meet the requirements, or through an online accreditation service called Verify Investor. The website's right out there on the screen, that they will provide the verification. They'll get the documents from you in order to provide verification within 24 and 48 hours. In the PPM on the investor portal, and we are going to snap it off and also include it, there is a standardized, there's a shell, a template, if you will, for what form you could give to your CPA to have them review and sign to affirm that you meet the accredited investor status. So keep an eye out for that. Awesome. And I'll hand it back over to Ray to go over the deal timeline and then open it up to live Q&A.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. So real quick, before we get into the live questions here, just to harp on a couple of things. One, when we did the webinar, we didn't have all of the documents inside the portal. They are in there now. Everything that you need is in the portal for you to actually do all of your signatures via e-signature. And so you can actually get on the system tonight and actually soft commit or firm commit at this point and essentially be ready to wire funds in a day or two at the latest. So everything is there. You can see the timeline is a little bit tight. We're still pushing to get this closed by June 1st. We are working to potentially get an extension, but we want to be ready just in case we can't get that extension to have all funding in. And so we are well on our way. We just got to keep pushing people to bring that money in quickly in case we do need it by that time frame. And so please put your money in quickly. If you're coming in on this deal, we do have a lot of investors that are interested, but we also need to make sure that as you provide that interest, that you understand that it's not just about doing the firm commitment, but when your money comes in. So everything is in there to help you get to that point. Don't wait, don't hesitate, don't be late, because you may not get a chance to get in later. So that's kind of the key. I'm not going to harp too much more on this. If there's any questions, reach out to your contact and they can walk you through this. They'll be able to get on the system with you. And I've done this before. I've had people get on the system, we get on a call, and I walk them through the steps that they need to do. You know, the first time may seem a little bit tough. It really isn't, but it could be to some folks. And we encourage you to just give us a call. Let us help you. All right. At this point, we'll go ahead and start off with the live audience questions. And Christian, I'm gonna let you kick it off since you've had a couple of questions. Let me paraphrase what you said, and you tell me if we got those correctly. You were asking how we were able to get the current rate that we have, which is 3.95% on this bridge loan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to JP. Since JP was the one that got this deal ahead of time, he can talk about that. I will caveat that one of our partners in the MTM group is actually has relationships through his other businesses as a broker, as a I guess a mortgage broker is the term. So he has, in many ways, can get favorable terms that most independent groups cannot get. So that's one thing that we have to our advantage. But I'll turn it over to JP to go over the last piece.
Sure. Thanks, Ray. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited about the team that we got here and also all your investor network that has showed up on the call. Great question. So as Ray mentioned, yes, part of it was through our Russell's relationship and our relationship with the lender. Lender is Arbor Bank. They're a very, very large bank within multifamily space. They are one of 25 or so DUS lenders. So they've got a great relationship with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they've got a private label bridge loan product. When we got this deal, when we got our term sheet, our signed term sheet from Arbor, the interest rate that we were able to get it for was basically 3.95%. And we'll be able to get a rate cap as part of our closing before we get the deal closed up. That will allow us to lock in the interest rate at closing for the remaining 3-year term that we have in the bridge loan there.
Fantastic, JP. Thank you. All right, at this point, Christian, did we answer all your questions? Or did you have any others? Did I miss one?
Yeah, I don't think they specified what the rate cap was. I know there's supposed to be a rate cap. What's the rate cap supposed to be?
So we won't be able to do the rate cap until it's time to close. Current rates are hovering around 4.15, 4.2. When we updated our model with the slightly higher uptake in interest rates, it doesn't really move or change the economics of the deal that much. So we can't. That's something we can't do until. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Does that adjust every year?
No. Once you get the rate cap, it's capped for the remainder of the loan term.
Okay, so the rate, it would be 3.95 for the 3 years?
That's the current rate we have listed on our term sheet with Arbor. And we won't be able to lock in the interest rate until we're about a day or two before closing of the deal. So,
Okay. All right, so is that rate locked in for 3 years, or does that adjust?
it does not adjust.
Okay.
That's why, yeah, it's capped at the rate at which it's locked in at for the remaining term of the bridge loan, which is full 3 years.
Okay, and the actual bridge loan, how much is that loan going to be for?
$24 million.
Okay. So, and I'm sorry to be asking these questions. I've never seen a deal like this before, so I'm just curious. So, for once the 3 years are up, do you go and get a different loan, or what happens at that point?
Yeah, I can take that one, JP, if you want. Essentially, there's the loan is a 3+1+1, and what happens is before the end of the 3rd year, if we can either refinance into a completely new loan, we can sell, or we can extend that bridge using those +1, which is plus 1 year plus 1 year. And what happens is there's actually a half percent kicker that goes in for every year that you extend. So if whatever rate we lock in at, they add another 0.5% to that if we choose to use that first +1 of the bridge. And then if we do it again, they'll lock in another 0.5%. So up for those 2 years, it could be another 1% interest to keep that loan all the way through. Obviously, we don't want to wait until the end of year 4 to try to figure something out, because you start running out of runway in your business plan. You want to do decision making in that year 3, max 3.5 before you get to 4. That makes sense.
Okay. So yeah, I think I kind of understand. And from what I was seeing, I think at year 3, you're saying that the investment, you would get that money back at the end of year 3. Are you getting that money back from the next loan that you get, or from the extension of the loan, or where's that money coming from?
Correct. From the refinance. When we refinance, remember, we've already done the value add on this piece. The property then, based on that new NOI, will be worth a lot more. And so we're able to take that higher amount of money for the refinance, because if, again, in commercial assets, you get the value of a property is based on that NOI at the end of the day. The NOI and the cap rate kind of decides where you're at. And so we believe that we'll be able to, once we refinance, still be able to return all of the principal while you still keep your equity in the deal, whatever your piece that you get based on your investment. And then at the sale, even though you've gotten your money back, you still get the upside from the sale based on, again, your equity in the deal.
Okay, okay. So does the refinance cancel the bridge loan?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
The bridge loan is called a bridge loan because it's aptly named as a bridge to get to agency debt or some other loan product. And the bridge loan is especially attractive because they allow us to borrow. They're financing 100% of our CapEx budget, $3.8 million of renovation costs for cheap money, right? That's one of the advantages. Alternatively, if this was an unstabilized property where it was 85% occupied or 80% occupied, and we have a lot of CapEx to do, a bridge product is a phenomenal product because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac won't allow us, they won't finance the property. Number one, they won't finance renovation costs. And number two, they won't finance on a property unless it's 90% plus occupancy. So that's where these bridge products become very attractive for groups like us, where our main bread and butter is value add.
Yeah. Thanks, JP.
Gotcha. For the refinance, what percentage of the value of the property do they do for the refinance?
It's
Or how much?
usually 75% loan to value on the refi.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, so we talked about the the property. I mean, it's in Atlanta, Buckhead. Very familiar with Buckhead and the style of living there. To reduce the risk on the renovations, what types of steps are being taken to stay on the timeline of getting them renovated to increase those rents?
Okay, so let me make sure I understood. So you're asking how can we ensure that we stay on time for those renovations?
Yeah, what kind of mitigations are you putting in there to, have the labor lined up, the material lined up, make sure that, there's units that become vacant?
Yeah, usually I'll start off and then I'll hand it off to Carla to talk a little bit about the renovation itself and the timing of it. But essentially, we have, the plan is to do about 3 to 4, I think is the rate that we're looking at. So when we analyze these up front, we take a look at what the leases look like. And then based on that, we can factor in approximately how many we can do. Now that's why we fluctuate between that 33 to 36 and maybe a little bit sooner. It just depends on how people filter through. We obviously want to keep tenants in place. We don't want to, vacate too much because then it affects cash flow. So I'll stop there in case, Carla, if you want to add anything to that as far as from a CapEx perspective, or really anybody else on the team that wants to jump in and talk a little bit about that.
Well, I was going to say as Ray indicated, once a lease is up, we're able to turn over the unit, and that'll happen sequentially. And we anticipate that to be about 3 to 4 units a month. If your concern is, supplies, availability of supplies, is that what I'm hearing a little bit?
Also, right?
I'm sorry, you were muted there.
That's part of the risk also, the material being there on time, the workers, the labor being there available to jump in as soon as there's a vacancy.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I know JP can speak to the construction team because he knows them very well, and great relationship already established there, and longstanding relationship. So JP, can you provide some additional insight as to
Happy to.
Okay.
And again, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so our construction partner is Durant Construction. We're working with them on another deal we closed recently in Riverdale, Georgia, which is just south of the airport. That's another $3.2 million CapEx budget that we're working with them. So Jorge, the principal there, with whom Ray had met when he toured the property with us a couple weeks ago, is an outstanding guy. He's local here in Atlanta. He's been in the business for 20 plus years. He has an army at his disposal. If you see some of the work that we're doing at the Riverdale property on the exterior and interior renovations, he can bring quite the team to bear. He also has at his disposal, he owns a warehouse or a storage facility. So we have the ability of acquiring bulk quantity of items. Number one, that gets us better pricing, allows our dollars to go farther, and number two, it locks in or minimizes risk for supply chain issues. We're in the process right now. We're working with our designers, a great group of gals that put together phenomenal design aesthetics and selections for the interior options here. What we've done. And the nice part about working with a group of professionals are if a particular product or finish is affected, we just have the girls literally pick a different option for us, or we find a suitable substitute that allows us to kind of get the job done. The nice part is, one of the big lead time items are really our flooring. We don't really have that problem because we have original hardwood floors in the property, and we don't plan on replacing it. We just plan on refinishing it. So that's one potential problem that we've kind of mitigated. The other piece too is in appliances. Appliances are one of those things where, in theory, you'd want the whole property to have the same appliance package, right? GE or Samsung or Maytag. But the truth is, as long as any particular unit or home has a matching set, that's really the big deal. So we can stand to have different manufactured appliances for each of the different units, but we're not anticipating any sort of labor shortages based on our GC's access to local labor talent, and then on the supply side, those are things that we could swap out with these because we've been doing it already.
Thanks, JP. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the Durant team is hungry, and that I've seen groups of GCs that are just going through the paces, and I've seen hungry ones, and not just hungry but qualified ones. And I got that same impression that these guys want the work, they have the labor at their disposal, and I couldn't agree more.
Let me add one little bit to that. You just reminded me is, when we shopped around for a number of GCs before we got our last deal. And one thing that stood out to us immediately with Jorge and his team was he was looking for a sponsor partner, right? They get the value in the work that we do. They get the value that the role they play in the relationship and the partnership is very critical, right? We're doing value add. The value add is really renovations, right? And if we got to stay on budget, and we've got to do good work, and we got to stay on time. And if you can get behind a good group like ours, then that means repeat business. And so this is someone that's kind of committed to us to stay on budget for us and commit to the quality. And that's I couldn't have asked for a better construction partner who's local. So there's additional color for you there.
Great. Thank you. That's a great response. Appreciate it.
Hey, Ray, this is Jaime Hooker.
Hey, Jaime, what's up, man?
Good. How are you?
You good?
Hey, listen, I might have a couple of investors for this opportunity, but talking about the accreditation as an investor, they might not be able to qualify as an accredited investor individually. But is it possible if they form an LLC, can the LLC, as they join forces, and the 2 people or 3 people between the 3 of them qualify as an accredited investor?
I would check with our attorney, but my inclination is to say no. That what will happen is when they do they apply as an LLC or some sort of entity, essentially every member of that entity has to do their own verification. So that I believe that's the way it is. I know it does make these deals sometimes tougher because some people aren't able to get in, but I would double check that. And if it's different, I'll get that back to you, but I'm almost positive that everybody has to be accredited on this, unless, if you're on the active partner team and you're part of the manager, there's a little flexibility there. But if you're just a passive investor, you really do have to have everybody on that team be
Individually. Okay. All right. Well, if you find otherwise, let me know.
Will
Okay.
do.
I'm trying to see if I can overcome that barrier. Anyway,
Understand.
All right.
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Hey, Ray, it's Martha. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Martha. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's a great presentation. Thank you, everybody. It's very thorough. Almost don't have any questions, but I did want to ask, how long are the leases? Are they regular 12 months, or are you doing any longer leases
I
for
believe
your tenants?
Yeah, I believe they're all 12 months, generally speaking. But since we really didn't get a chance to touch on, some of the things that JP and his group do differently, that really take this to a different level of member versus tenant, if you will. I think I'm gonna toss that back up to JP to see if he wants to address a little bit about that philosophy and why he and our group is able to take this property and really bump the rents the way we believe we can and still be well below sort of the average.
Yeah, thanks. So good question. These are 12-month leases in place. We call them membership agreements, but they are still technically leases. What we like to shy away from, though, because our goal is to create a sense of community, and we don't want like this transient element, is to do short-term leases, 6 months, 8 months, things like that. The only time that would come into play, we have a larger property in Shaker Heights, Ohio, with 278 units there. And we had, sometimes we find all of the, when we took over, a lot of the leases were expiring at the same time. And so we would stagger them out upon renewal so that you didn't have everybody renewing at the same time in July, for example, right? But generally speaking, our goal is to foster the sense of community. The demographic that lives there, these are all young single professionals for the most part, or formerly known as yuppies, back in the day, right? Part of what we're trying to do here in a community like that is foster that sense of community. If you've seen through some of the first pictures in the presentation, in the offering memorandum, you'll see some great photos of the common areas. There's like a really large brick wall behind where there's a big fire pit, or some wood and area. Those are the sort of spots that ending up yappy out in the community, and having maybe some chips and guac on a Friday night for the members there, and really invite everybody out to meet their neighbor and get to know one another. Because our experience and our mentor's experience, who had built this philosophy, Howard Primer, people would rather give up their left arm than leave their friends, and that's the goal here. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I was just kind of wondering, because I know I'm in Tampa Bay, and some of the nicer areas are actually going to 13, even 18-month leases, because housing is so short here. So I just kind of wonder if you
Sure.
guys are going that way as well, which makes sense. Obviously, you want to create that sense of membership, which is exactly why these guys are doing it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I like the concept of a membership, that the folks that are living there get that sense of belonging to a community. Are there any other sources of income, let's say parking, or are there any other things that are bringing in income to the property?
There's
Yeah.
lots of them.
Yes.
Lots.
Yes.
Lots and lots
Great.
and lots.
Sure. So like you said, in terms of some of the other things, the other alternate sources of revenue, or kind of increasing those sources of revenue, some of the things that we're looking at, and like you said, JP could probably go into a little more detail on some of this, but the high-speed internet agreements, but it's not uncommon to, create a partnership with an internet provider and then find ways to get a small piece of each contract that's signed by a tenant or member in this case. So that's just one thing. And then also, I think we talked about parking upgrades. We were gonna put in there Of course, you have things like the laundry facility, which is pretty commonplace, right? In a lot of apartments like this, the coin-operated laundry facilities as well. And then is there any that I'm missing, JP? I know you said there was a bunch of them. Those are just a few that I had off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was high-speed internet, parking decals. It was, I mean, it's crazy in that market.
Storage.
Application fees and move-in fees are high. I think it's application fees are $95 and then move-in fees are $250. So there's good money right there. And then also underground storage, under building storage lockers.
That's the big one.
That's the one I forgot.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, when
And
I
that's-
saw that huge space essentially that's available to essentially put out some lockers, and my mind, especially for these these 1-bedroom units where people can go in and store their bicycles and all these other things that people want to have as part of their lifestyle. There's plenty of room for that, and we're looking at what was that, $45 as a trial run for each of these lockers. And so, yeah, and each building has essentially a basement that you can build lockers. So there's a lot of room there for that.
And that pricing is below the prevailing storage rental rates in the area. So that's a win right there.
Which is closer to $85, I believe.
Ooh, nice. Perfect. Yeah, we try, obviously we don't want to, put things at the max when we underwrite, because that kind of defeats the purpose of trying to be conservative. And we like to be in a place where we underpromise to investors and over deliver. That's a much better place than trying to get an additional investor or two with higher numbers, and then you essentially lose all of them on the next deal because we didn't deliver on that. So we try to be very careful when we come up with these estimates. That doesn't mean we're going to pick the lowest number on every category and that's how we do it, because we'd never get into a deal that way. But we try to get a good looking deals and really build the plan and see if we're able to at least get to the median and make those numbers work. And then we have plenty of meat on the bone. There's a question on the chat about the minimum investment. Right now, the minimum investment is 100,000 on this deal. At the tail end, maybe a couple of days before closing, we may have an opportunity to bring in some folks at 75K, maybe 50K. But that really depends on if there's any slots remaining. If we fill this up with $100,000 investors or higher, a lot of people are coming in with 200 or more, then there won't be any opportunities for less than 100. So it is a little bit tough, but if we were to bring that down, we'd need a lot more investors to get to that number, and it just makes it harder. So we got to use that number to at least get us to a reasonable amount to get to that raise quickly that we need. And there was
And to add on to that point too, Ray, this is where communication is so key with whoever your general partner contact is making sure that you're staying in communication with them on your thoughts on the deal, your questions on your deal, and what your investment capacity is, because they're going to ultimately be the ones that are going to let you know if there is any flexibility in the 11th hour to Ray's point, if we're not full by then.
Yeah, and what people want to do is they want to get on the system and do as much as they can beforehand. And so that way, when the word comes out that you are one of those that can get in at a lower number, if we have a couple of slots, it won't be many. So you definitely need to at least have done everything, because the minute you start, sort of wavering, you're going to miss it if that's really what you need to be under 100. So that's one. The other one is, thanks, Kelly, for the update on that, or for the addition there. The other one is there a possibility that you can turn this deal into a 506B? No, it's not possible. And the reason is the minute we go out live on social media or any public broadcasting of this deal, we lost the ability to go and turn this into a 506B, which requires that all investors, even the passive investors, have a relationship with a personal relationship with their partner that's bringing them on, and that they had to have that relationship up front. The other piece of that is it can't be public advertising. So no, what I've seen and what we may do in future deals is essentially start out with a 506B and then convert it to a 506C, because at that point you can close out the 506B. You've got investors in there that have done these deals and that through that previous relationship are able to get into that deal. And then we close it off And then now are able to open it up to the public. So those are new ways to kind of do both. That's not what we have here, though. This one is a straight 506C from the beginning.
Yes, you have had prior deals at 50,000 participation. This is 100. Is this much better returns? Sorry if that was answered before.
Yeah, so the reason, and I kind of talked a little bit about it, but I think the biggest reason is because these are Class B assets. They cost more. It's tough to really go much lower than 100 in order to have the capital that we need to close in a timely manner. I think that's the biggest thing. I think at the end of the day, when you look at your return on investment on a deal where it's 50,000, you double your money. That's a 2x multiple. So in that sense, we're going to be pretty close to that here. If you come in with 100, you'll be close to 200 on the back end. That includes obviously your cash flow throughout the deal and then on sale. Could be a little bit higher than that. It could go faster than 3 years. It just depends. But we try to give ourselves that wiggle room. But yeah, essentially it's your return is your return, but we have to keep that number high so we can get the money quickly so that we can close on the deal, because the seller is not going to wait on us. The seller, is going to sell. We take this down, great. If we don't take it down with the extension that we may or may not get, then they're going to go to someone else, and someone else will pay that or pay more. Essentially, I think they would pay more because prices have still shown resistance to any kind of Fed rates, and they're still going up. And especially in a place like Buckhead, where you don't have essentially tenants or members that are needing to rent. Essentially, the people that are there are lifestyle renters. They want the lifestyle. They want to live there. They could buy a house if they wanted to. Now, maybe not right around Buckhead, because these houses are over $1 million all around that. If you saw our presentation, you'd see that it's essentially all that area is $1 million homes. So it's pretty exclusive. But essentially, most of those folks could go and buy a house in Atlanta if they wanted to, but they would not be in Buckhead.
Hey, Ray, this is Christian.
Hi, Christian. Go ahead.
Can you dig a little deeper into the levered equity multiple? I know it said it can be between 1.2 and 1.7%. Can you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, so see, the equity multiple is between 1.7, I want to say 7.8 or 7.2, and it could be up to 2.2. And what that means is, so you invest $100,000. If the equity multiple is 2, you essentially are getting double that when you essentially close out of this deal. When we sell at year 5, your return will be 100%, and you're getting double your money. So you started with 100, your return will be another 100. That makes it a 2x multiple. If it's a little bit less than that, that's when we get into the 1.7, 1.8. So just say you would get about an $80,000 return as opposed to the 100 if it were about a 1.8. If it were a little bit more, then you're getting a little bit more than double your money. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. A follow-up to that question, and because I've been hearing this for such a long time, everybody's seeing the values of the houses just continue to skyrocket. It seems very similar to 2008 timeframe. What are your thoughts around bubble busting and there being a downturn?
Great question.
Ray, can I take it?
Take it, Tim. You're director of research on this one. You got it.
No, it's such a common belief, mostly I think because it makes for great headlines. But really there is no bubble, and that's because there's still a shortage. Prices are going up based on the market fundamentals, which is a lack of supply. And that lack of supply is still here regardless of how high the prices are going. So you may see a cooling off as we get closer to filling that housing supply, but listening to the news today, we're still, I don't know, 5 million households off from even meeting supply. So we have a long way to go. And in a lot of places, that's simply not going to happen, whether it's the speed at which things can get built, which we are already seeing is being impacted by, supply chain issues with stuff coming in, the lack of workforce, et cetera. So things are not going to be built at record speed right now, regardless. So it's going to be even harder to meet that demand. So if anything, prices may cool down a bit, but there certainly is no bubble because it's not unfounded pricing. It's based off simple supply and demand. So I would say that's to be the case for at least the next 5 years. And don't quote me, but depending on how fast things can get built, and a lot of that is local too, right? Depending on ordinances, on zoning, whether they're willing to allow multifamily and large multifamily to be built. And in a lot of places, they have that, not in my backyard mentality, which is only going to further constrict the amount of housing available. So.
Yeah, that's fair. And to add, sorry, to add on, just to add on to what Tim's saying, one of the things that I love about multifamily specifically in minimizing the risk of a bubble pop, if you will, is that single family homes are valued on how houses around you are sold at. So if home buyers are being priced out because interest rates are going up or the cost of houses are going up, you can start to see that in the actual housing prices. Again, we have a shortage, to Tim's point. However, from a multifamily perspective, the properties are valued based on the net operating income, which is really all about your income and then your expenses. So one of the things that we've done in this particular project to be conservative is that while the last year we've seen rents in this market go up in the high teens, we are only forecasting 3 to 4% in our 5-year projection. Industry experts are projecting a 5% increase in rent. So we are being very conservative to obviously what we've seen in the last year, and even conservative what industry experts are saying. So that's another way of just how we're kind of hedging that back and being conservative in order to protect ourselves in the bottom line there.
Yeah, great points. I was going to add that, Tim mentioned locality and he talked about ordinance. I would say locality is also important in a downturn, because you want to be in areas where there is a very diverse economy. It doesn't get more diverse than Atlanta. There's just so much corporate headquarters there, the airport, everything. It just got a lot of things going for it, that a lot of things have to go wrong everywhere else before really places like Atlanta, where you have that huge population and all the employment opportunities, really take a dip. And again, remember, this is a B-class asset. We're not really going after members that are essentially, renters by need. These are renters that are choosing to rent. Because they want to be there. And now that they're able to work wherever they work, there's even more reason for them to stay in places like Buckhead, where it has all the amenities that they would like near them. So they can work, they can live there, enjoy the lifestyle there, the parks, everything else going on around there, and still work in other places. So it actually helps that. But at the end of the day, at the end of Tim's point that, this is not 2008, people get confused. There is so much limits in supply, whether it's the actual housing, whether it's, the supply chain of equipment, all kinds of things that are being delayed. Even to the question, I think it was Steve's question on labor shortages. Generally speaking, there are labor shortages as well. So you have all these things that are contributing to this lack of supply. And if you're able to cash in on supply and have your supply going right, you'll be so much more ahead than everyone else. But at the end of the day, the overall, environment is not conducive to what you're saying, where you have this bubble like of excess in homes and places for people to live.
Hey, Ray, I actually have a question along those lines.
Yeah.
Do you all foresee any risk from larger issues like, say, a pandemic? Does that area of Atlanta, is it subject to any sort of where you wouldn't be able to collect on late rent if there was any sort of emergency in the future like that?
I'd like to speak on this. I'm actually an on-site community manager,
All
and I
right.
worked in Buckhead on Peachtree Road at a similar property at the start of the pandemic. It was built in 1963. It has no renovations whatsoever. And I will say that we did okay. A lot of the residents were able to still make their rent payments. I had maybe less than a handful of people who had some difficulty and were affected by COVID, but overall the rent collection was okay. I also worked at a property in Marietta with a different demographic, which was more of a working poor, and they were actually hit very hard by COVID, and the delinquency was very high. So it's definitely being in Buckhead. I think if you do have qualified people who live there, you should be okay.
Yeah. and these
Yeah, I think
professionals don't have to go to work. They can work from home, which a lot of them do.
Exa-
Still do.
exactly, that white collar demographic is more likely to be able to weather that storm simply because they can work from home in many of their jobs.
And you add on the attractiveness of the rental rates relative to the broader market there. If anyone wants to downsize, they're going to look at this particular property because it's less. It's something as simple as, trying to shave a few pennies here and there. But yeah, the white collar component really bolsters that argument greatly. Thank you, Liana, for that input.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point too. I think a lot of employers have adapted to the new reality and can transition a lot faster than they can in the past. And I think you've got the point where, B+ property, A property, you're going to have people that work those sorts of jobs. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, the other kind of interesting point with the COVID in general, even if you talk about C-class, I think where you have professional property management, it doesn't get more professional than JP and his team. You're able to weather those things a lot easier as well, because you're able to provide more information to tenants. You're able to do a lot more for those communities that to providing just information. What we saw with COVID is the smaller landlords just had a much harder time because these folks didn't have the time nor the access to resources that large, property managers, professional property managers are able to bring to bear, even within the C-class property community. So in this case, yes, it won't be as big of an issue, but also property management plays a huge role. What else we got?
Ray, we had a great question of asking if the recording of this Q&A session will be made available either to rewatch or if we're joining a little late. There will be a recording of it that we will be able to send out. I will say that many of us posted on LinkedIn a registration link. Make sure that you reach out to that individual directly to share your email address so that they will have your email address to send out to.
We'll send it out via email as soon as it's done, and it'll also be in the portal as soon as we get it, a chance to download it. We'll actually upload it into the portal. You'll be able to see on the portal drone footage of the property. We didn't really go over that today, but there's actual drone footage so you can see what that property looks like and the area. It's got the webinar presentation. Obviously, it's got the actual documents, the offering memorandum, the private placement memorandum. Everything is there in one place. Anything else? All right. Well, I think we killed it. I think we went a good hour and 15 minutes, and I appreciate everyone that joined us today. If you have other questions, reach out. I mean, I tell you, I love this business, and my partners love this business, and we like to engage and we like to be transparent. So don't hesitate. Even if we had a lot of people that asked questions well before we had this Q&A. So don't hesitate. Get in there, get in your subscription and get going on your documents as you get money together. If you got to put that piece together at the end there, don't wait, because the verification takes a couple of days. And essentially it's first come, first serve, like we mentioned. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. And remember to invest where it makes sense.